Once upon a time, in the bustling city of New York, there lived a man named Jack Harrison, known throughout Wall Street as one of the wealthiest financiers in the business. His suits were tailored, his penthouse overlooked Central Park, and his cars, a collection of sleek, luxury vehicles, lined his private garage. Jack had spent his life amassing his fortune, building an empire that stretched from real estate to tech. He was brilliant, calculating, and, as many would whisper behind closed doors, rather heartless. One particularly crisp autumn evening, as Jack strolled along Fifth Avenue after an unusually late meeting, he crossed paths with a beggar. The man looked ragged, his clothes layered and worn, his face hidden under a bushy beard. He sat on the cold pavement, a cardboard sign beside him reading, "Anything helps." His eyes, however, were sharp and clear, and as Jack passed by, they met his own unwaveringly. "Mr. Harrison," the beggar addressed him, catching Jack off guard. Jack stopped. It wasn't often he encountered someone who knew him on the streets, especially not someone in such tattered clothes. "How do you know who I am?" "Everyone knows the great Jack Harrison," the beggar replied, his voice calm but with a strange edge. "But what you don't know, Mr. Harrison, is that there are things in this world your money cannot buy, and some dangers it cannot protect you from." Jack scoffed, barely able to contain his amusement. "And you're here to enlighten me, I presume?" "I'm here to warn you," the beggar said, his eyes flashing in the dim streetlight. "A storm is coming, one that no amount of wealth or influence can shield you from. Unless," he paused, letting his words hang in the air, "unless you heed my warning." Jack raised an eyebrow, genuinely intrigued despite himself. "And what exactly are you warning me about?" "There are forces at play that go beyond the stock market, Mr. Harrison. Forces that, if ignored, will turn even the mightiest of men into mere dust," the beggar said cryptically. "Tomorrow, your life could take a very different path. Or, you could choose to open your eyes." "Look, I don't have time for fairy tales," Jack said with a dismissive wave, though the beggar's words echoed strangely in his mind. "Here," he added, pulling a crisp $100 bill from his wallet and tossing it at the man's feet. "Consider this your payment for the entertainment." But the beggar didn't reach for the money. He simply shook his head, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Keep your money, Jack Harrison. Tomorrow you might wish you had listened." Jack walked away, convinced the man was mad. But as he reached the corner of the block, he found himself glancing back, only to see the beggar still watching him, his gaze piercing and unblinking. The next morning, Jack awoke to the sound of an unfamiliar engine purring outside his penthouse. Curious, he walked out onto his balcony, where a brand-new, gleaming luxury car stood parked in his driveway. It was a sleek model, a beauty he hadn't seen before, and yet it looked like it belonged there, in front of his residence. He called his assistant, Eleanor, to ask if she had arranged for a car to be delivered, but she denied any knowledge of it. Perplexed, Jack decided to take the car for a drive, as if to prove it was real. As he got behind the wheel, he noticed a small envelope resting on the passenger seat, sealed with a wax emblem he didn't recognize. Inside, a note read, "Consider this a taste of what's to come, Jack Harrison. Today you'll face a choice, one that will shape your fate." The words seemed to swirl in his mind, mingling with the beggar's warning from the night before. The beggar's cryptic message had been unsettling enough, but this note, left in an unknown car, hinted at something much deeper, something he couldn't shake off. Jack drove the car around the city, attempting to clear his mind, but everywhere he went, he felt the eyes of strangers on him, as if they knew something he didn't. Finally, he found himself back on Fifth Avenue, parked at the very spot where he had encountered the beggar. But the man was gone. For the next few days, Jack went about his life as usual, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The luxury car remained parked in his garage, but he hadn't dared to drive it since that strange morning. And then, as if fate itself were orchestrating his life, Jack began receiving anonymous letters, each one more mysterious than the last. urging him to rethink his priorities, to look beyond wealth. One evening, a letter arrived bearing an address and a simple message. The answer you seek is here. Without knowing why, Jack felt compelled to go. The address led him to a modest brownstone in a quiet neighborhood. As he entered, he was greeted by none other than the beggar from the street. "You came," the man said, his voice surprisingly warm. Jack was speechless. The man's ragged clothes had been replaced by a sharp, tailored suit, and he looked nothing like the street beggar he had met. The stranger's eyes held a deep wisdom, and Jack felt, for the first time, genuinely out of his depth. "I told you, didn't I, that there are forces beyond wealth?" "What is this?" Jack demanded, struggling to maintain his composure. "Who are you?" The man chuckled softly. "Think of me as a guide. I came to you because I saw a potential that goes beyond money. You've reached the pinnacle of what wealth can achieve, but there's more to life, Jack. You've forgotten what it means to feel alive, to be part of something bigger." Jack was silent, grappling with a strange realization. The life he had built, the empire he had spent decades crafting, suddenly felt hollow. If you truly want to make a difference, to find purpose beyond numbers and stocks, you'll need to let go, the man continued. You'll need to lose everything in order to find yourself. It was a proposal Jack could scarcely comprehend, let alone accept. But as the days went on, the words of the beggar haunted him, gnawing at his mind, filling him with an insatiable hunger for something more. Eventually, Jack made a decision that shocked everyone around him. He sold his assets, donating the majority of his wealth to various charities and causes. His luxury cars were auctioned off, his penthouse sold. Friends and colleagues whispered that he had gone mad. But Jack felt free. He spent the following years traveling, meeting people from all walks of life, learning from them in ways he never thought possible. He experienced joy, sorrow, and everything in between. And through it all, he held on to the memory of the beggar, the man who had shown him a path he hadn't known he needed. One day, years later, as he walked through a crowded street in a foreign city, Jack spotted a familiar figure in the crowd, the beggar. Only now, he looked like an ordinary man, blending seamlessly into the world around him. Their eyes met, and for a moment nothing else existed. The man smiled and nodded, as if to say, "You finally understand." Jack felt a sense of peace he hadn't known was possible, knowing he had found his place, his purpose. The man turned, disappearing into the crowd, and Jack watched him go, forever grateful for the warning that had changed his life. Jack's transformation was only the beginning of his new life. After selling his properties and moving out of his penthouse, he sought a quiet place far from the city to reflect on the journey he'd begun. He eventually settled in a small town on the coast, living in a modest house by the sea. Every morning, he woke up to the sound of waves crashing against the shore, a far cry from the constant hum of city life. The simplicity of his new surroundings felt liberating. Jack spent his days walking along the beach, reading, and occasionally speaking to locals who were drawn to his quiet charisma, even if they had no idea of his past life. One particular morning, as he sat on a bench overlooking the water, a young man approached him. The stranger introduced himself as Daniel, an artist struggling to make ends meet but full of dreams. Daniel was curious about Jack, who, despite his unassuming lifestyle, carried himself with an air of confidence and wisdom. "You're new in town, right?" Daniel asked. "We don't get many people moving here who seem like they've been through a lot." Jack smiled, finding Daniel's straightforwardness refreshing. "I suppose you could say that. I spent many years chasing success, but it wasn't until recently that I realized I was chasing the wrong things." Daniel sat beside him, intrigued. "How did you figure that out?" "It took a while," Jack said, a distant look in his eyes as he thought back to the beggar's warning. "But sometimes, life has a way of showing us what really matters, though usually, it's when we least expect it." Jack began to share his story, carefully omitting specific details of his wealth and former lifestyle. He spoke about the pressure to succeed, the loneliness that followed him even in rooms filled with people, and the strange encounter that had forced him to see beyond the illusion of wealth. Daniel listened intently, clearly moved. "It sounds like you've been given a second chance," he said. "I wish I had a sign like that. Sometimes it feels like I'm wandering in the dark, hoping something will work out." Jack nodded thoughtfully, sensing a familiar yearning in Daniel's voice. "You don't always need a sign as dramatic as mine. Sometimes what you're looking for is right in front of you." As days turned into weeks, Jack and Daniel became close friends. Jack found himself mentoring Daniel, sharing insights he had gathered through both his former life in business and his new one in self-discovery. He encouraged Daniel to pursue his art, not with the goal of fame or fortune, but for the love of creating. Inspired by Jack's advice, Daniel began to pour his heart into his work, producing paintings filled with a rawness and honesty that hadn't been there before. Jack watched as Daniel's art blossomed, attracting the attention of local galleries and eventually art enthusiasts from across the region. Through Daniel's journey, Jack felt his own sense of purpose deepen. He realized that guiding others was far more fulfilling than any boardroom deal he'd ever made. His life in the small town was simple, but it was filled with meaning in a way he had never experienced before. One evening, Daniel invited Jack to the opening of his first gallery exhibit. As they stood in the small, crowded room, surrounded by Daniel's paintings, Jack felt an overwhelming sense of pride. This was what life was meant to be, he thought, creating something beautiful, something that moved others. At the end of the night, Daniel raised a glass in a toast, his voice filled with gratitude. "To Jack," he said, "the man who showed me the way. Thank you for believing in me." As the crowd cheered, Jack felt an unfamiliar warmth fill his chest. It was a feeling he had spent his whole life searching for but had never found, until now. That night, as Jack walked home, he felt a strange sense of peace. He had given up so much of what he once held dear, and yet he felt richer than he ever had before. Months passed, and Jack continued to live a quiet life, though his impact on those around him grew. People came to him for advice, not because of who he had once been, but because of the wisdom he had gained through his journey. Jack's reputation as a kind, insightful man spread throughout the community, and he found himself embraced by the townsfolk who admired his humility and compassion. One day, as Jack was strolling through the town square, he encountered an elderly woman struggling with her bags. Without hesitation, he offered to help, carrying her groceries to her small home at the edge of town. Grateful for his kindness, the woman invited him in for tea. Over tea, they spoke about life, love, and the choices that define us. The woman, named Evelyn, shared stories of her youth, and Jack found himself captivated by her wisdom and resilience. Evelyn's life had been filled with its own share of hardships, yet she remained hopeful and grateful for the little joys that each day brought. Jack continued visiting Evelyn, drawn to her perspective on life. Their friendship blossomed, and Jack found himself opening up to her in a way he hadn't with anyone since he'd left New York. Evelyn reminded him of the simple beauty of human connection, something he had missed during his years of pursuing wealth and power. One evening, as they sat together on Evelyn's porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she turned to him with a gentle smile. "You found peace, haven't you?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with understanding. Jack nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I have, and it's thanks to people like you, and others who showed me the way when I needed it most." Evelyn squeezed his hand, her gaze filled with warmth. "Then you've already found everything you need." Jack felt a deep sense of contentment settle within him. He realized that he no longer missed the life he had left behind. He had found something far more valuable: purpose, connection, and a sense of belonging that no amount of money could buy. The next morning, as Jack walked along the beach, he thought back to the beggar who had changed his life with a simple warning. In his heart, Jack felt a quiet gratitude for the man's mysterious intervention. He knew now that life had guided him exactly where he needed to be. And as the waves crashed against the shore, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that he would spend the rest of his days helping others find their own path, just as he had found his. In the years that followed, Jack became something of a legend in the small coastal town. People came to know him as the man with a mysterious past, someone who had once lived a life of untold luxury but now chose simplicity and service. He became the quiet force behind many of the town's initiatives, organizing community events, helping local businesses thrive, and mentoring the youth who sought guidance. One particular afternoon, Jack was approached by a young woman named Emily. She was a recent graduate who had just returned to town after years of studying in the city. She felt lost and uncertain about her future, torn between pursuing a high-paying job in finance and her true passion, writing. She had heard of Jack's wisdom from friends and hoped he could offer her some direction. As they walked along the beach, Emily confided her fears to Jack. "I spent so many years studying finance because it felt like the safe choice," she admitted. "But deep down, I've always wanted to write. I just don't know if it's enough." Jack listened, his gaze soft and understanding. "I know what it's like to feel trapped by choices that seem safe." He paused, watching the waves lap at the shore. "Sometimes, the hardest thing is to let go of what you think you should do and follow what makes you come alive." Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with doubt but also hope. "But what if it doesn't work out? What if I end up regretting it?" Jack smiled gently. "Life is full of risks, Emily. But the only thing you'll ever truly regret is not giving yourself the chance to do what you love." Inspired by Jack's words, Emily decided to take a leap of faith. She began writing, pouring her thoughts and feelings onto the page. Over time, her work caught the attention of local publications, and she even found a small following online. Her success wasn't immediate, but the joy she felt from following her passion was worth every struggle. Jack watched with pride as Emily grew into her craft. She became a voice for the community, writing stories that highlighted the beauty and challenges of life in a small town. Her words resonated with people, bringing them closer together and fostering a renewed sense of community pride. Through Emily's success, Jack saw the ripple effect of his own journey. It was as if, by choosing a different path for himself, he had opened doors for others to follow their dreams. He realized that his role in life now was to help others see beyond the limits they placed on themselves, just as he had been guided to do. Years passed, and Jack continued to impact the lives of countless people in the town. His influence was subtle but profound. He taught people to appreciate the beauty of simple things, to find meaning in their work, and to cherish the connections they made along the way. One summer, the town decided to hold a festival to celebrate its history and community. Jack was invited to be a part of the planning committee, and he eagerly took on the role. The festival was a success, drawing people from neighboring towns and creating a sense of unity that was palpable. As the festival came to a close, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. The beggar who had once warned Jack on that fateful night in New York. Dressed in a clean but modest outfit, he seemed to blend effortlessly into the crowd, as though he had always been a part of the town. Jack's heart raced as he approached the man. After all these years, he had so many questions, yet he was unsure where to begin. The man smiled knowingly. "I see you found your way, Jack." Jack nodded, emotions flooding him. "I did, but I have to ask, who are you? And why did you help me that night?" The man chuckled softly, a twinkle in his eye. "Think of me as a messenger, Jack. Some of us are called to be reminders of what truly matters. Your life was heading down a path that would have left you empty, despite all your wealth. You needed a nudge, a moment to pause and rethink your purpose." Jack absorbed the words, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Thank you. You changed my life in ways I could never have imagined." The man placed a hand on Jack's shoulder, his gaze warm and kind. "No, Jack, you changed your life. I only gave you the push. The rest was up to you." With that, the man turned and began to walk away, disappearing into the crowd as if he were a mere figment of Jack's imagination. Jack watched him go, feeling a profound peace settle over him. He realized that the man's words were true. He had been the one to make the choice, to embrace a life of purpose and connection. As the years continued to pass, Jack became a beloved figure in the town. His life was filled with friendships, mentorship, and quiet joy. He became a father figure to many, a guide to those seeking direction, and a friend to all who needed one. His journey from wealth and isolation to simplicity and community had transformed him into a man who found fulfillment not in material possessions, but in the impact he made on the lives of others. Eventually, Jack's story began to spread beyond the town. Journalists and writers from the city came to interview him, curious about the former millionaire who had left everything behind for a life of humble service. Jack welcomed them, sharing his story with humility and honesty, hoping that others might be inspired to find their own path. One writer, a young woman named Sarah, was particularly moved by Jack's tale. She decided to write a book about his journey, capturing not just the story of a man who had left wealth behind, but the wisdom he had gained along the way. The book became a sensation, touching the hearts of readers around the world. Through Sarah's book, Jack's story reached people he would never meet, inspiring countless others to rethink their lives, to prioritize purpose over profit, and to find meaning in the small moments. The world came to know Jack Harrison not as a millionaire, but as a man who had discovered the true meaning of wealth, a wealth that could not be measured in dollars but in the lives he touched. One crisp autumn day, Jack sat on the beach, watching the waves as he often did. He was older now, his hair touched with gray, his face lined with years of laughter and love. As he sat in the golden light of the setting sun, he felt a sense of completeness, of knowing he had lived a life that truly mattered. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the last rays on his face. In that quiet moment, he knew that he had fulfilled his purpose, that he had found the life he had once thought was out of reach. And as the stars began to appear in the evening sky, Jack Harrison smiled, content in the knowledge that he had finally come home. In the years that followed, Jack's story became a source of inspiration for people far and wide. His journey, from a Wall Street titan to a quiet, humble man living by the sea, struck a chord in a world increasingly driven by material success and the constant pursuit of wealth. Jack's story reminded people that there were alternative paths to fulfillment, paths that were less about accumulation and more about connection, purpose, and presence. But Jack's work wasn't finished. He'd found himself called not just to help people in his small town, but to share what he'd learned on a larger scale. One evening, Jack received an unexpected letter from a university in New York. They wanted him to speak at an event titled Rethinking Wealth, a conversation on purpose beyond profit. The invitation surprised Jack. After all, he hadn't stepped foot in New York for years and had long left his high-powered life behind. Despite his hesitation, Jack felt compelled to accept. He saw it as a chance to reach people who, like his former self, were caught in the trap of wealth and ambition. So, with a mix of excitement and trepidation, he returned to New York City. When Jack arrived at the university, he was struck by how little he missed the bustling city. The skyscrapers, the hurried pace, the noise, they all felt foreign to him now, as if they belonged to a different lifetime. The auditorium was packed with students, young professionals, and people from all walks of life eager to hear from the man who had turned his back on wealth and privilege. As he took the stage, Jack felt a moment of doubt. How would he convey to them the depth of what he'd experienced, the peace he'd found in a life stripped of luxury? But as he looked out into the audience, he saw faces filled with curiosity, hope, and perhaps even a longing for something they couldn't yet name. Jack began to speak, not with the authority of his former business self, but with the humility of a man who had learned that life's true treasures lay in simplicity and service. "My life once looked very different," he said, his voice steady and calm. "I had power, influence, wealth, everything the world tells you to strive for. But one night, I met a man on the street who changed everything with a simple warning. He told me that a storm was coming, a storm that my wealth could not protect me from." He went on to share how the beggar's words had haunted him, how they'd eventually led him to give up everything in search of something deeper. He spoke of the people he'd met along the way, the lives he'd touched, and the peace he'd found in a life that wasn't about accumulation but about giving. As he spoke, Jack noticed tears in the eyes of some audience members. He could tell that his story was resonating, that it was touching something deep within them. When he finished, there was a long, thoughtful silence before the room erupted in applause. After the talk, people lined up to speak with him, to ask questions, to seek advice. Jack stayed late into the night, listening to their stories, offering words of encouragement, and sharing bits of wisdom he had gathered over the years. One young man, a recent graduate, approached Jack with a mix of excitement and desperation. "I've been working so hard to make it in finance," he confessed. "I thought it was what I wanted, but now, I don't even know who I am anymore." Jack placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes we have to lose ourselves to truly find ourselves. Don't be afraid to step back, to question what really matters to you. It's never too late to start over." The young man's eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Jack returned to his coastal town with a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that his journey was about more than his own transformation. It was about helping others see the possibility of a life beyond the trappings of success. He decided to start a foundation focused on encouraging people to pursue meaningful work and live with purpose, regardless of their financial or social standing. The foundation offered workshops, mentorship programs, and community events, all aimed at helping people find fulfillment beyond material wealth. Jack called the foundation the Second Path, symbolizing the journey he had taken and the alternative he believed was available to everyone willing to look within. Through his work with the Second Path, Jack continued to touch the lives of countless individuals. People from all over the country traveled to attend the foundation's programs, seeking a way out of the relentless pursuit of success and into a life of purpose. Jack himself led many of the workshops, drawing on his own experiences to guide people towards self-discovery. One of the most popular programs at the foundation was called The Simple Choice. Participants were asked to choose one possession, habit, or commitment that didn't serve their well-being and to let it go. It was a symbolic act, but for many, it became a profound moment of release, a first step toward a life less burdened by the need for more. As the foundation grew, Jack recruited people from all walks of life to join him in his mission. Emily, the writer he had once encouraged to follow her passion, became a central part of the team, helping others find their creative voices. Daniel, the artist, led art workshops that allowed participants to express their journey toward a simpler life. Over time, Jack's work drew the attention of journalists, authors, and even filmmakers, each wanting to tell the story of the man who had walked away from wealth to find true happiness. But Jack remained humble, always redirecting the spotlight away from himself and toward the message he was sharing. One day, as Jack sat in his office at the Second Path, he received a letter. It was written in familiar, careful handwriting, and it bore no return address. As Jack unfolded the paper, he found himself reading these words. "Dear Jack, I see that you've chosen the Second Path, just as I hoped you would. You've come a long way from the man I met on that street in New York. You've built something beautiful, something that will outlast you and touch lives you'll never even know about. Remember, the journey never truly ends. There will always be more people to help, more lives to touch. Keep walking the path, Jack, and never forget why you started. With gratitude, a friend." Jack smiled, his heart filled with a quiet joy. He didn't know who the letter was from, though he suspected it was the beggar himself, the mysterious man who had sparked his journey so many years ago. That evening, Jack walked along the beach, the waves crashing gently at his feet. He thought of the countless lives he had touched, the friends he had made, the lessons he had learned. His life had taken a path he could never have imagined, yet it was richer and fuller than anything he had once aspired to. And as the sun set over the water, Jack whispered a quiet thank you to the beggar, to the people he had helped, and to the journey itself. He had found his purpose, his place in the world, and he knew that the work he had started would continue long after he was gone. For Jack, it was enough, and as the stars appeared in the night sky, he knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Jack's impact continued to grow over the years, spreading far beyond the borders of the small coastal town he now called home. As he aged, he saw how his journey from the relentless pursuit of wealth to a life of purpose had become something of a legend. People from all walks of life, young and old, wealthy and struggling, felt drawn to the story of a man who had redefined success on his own terms. One day, a young filmmaker named Amelia reached out to Jack, eager to capture his story in a documentary. She was passionate about sharing narratives that inspired people to rethink their priorities, and Jack's transformation was precisely the kind of story she felt the world needed. Jack hesitated, knowing he preferred to stay out of the spotlight, but Amelia's sincerity and dedication to the message convinced him. The documentary, titled The Second Path, followed Jack's journey through interviews with people he'd helped over the years. It captured scenes from his new life by the sea, the friendships he'd formed in the town, and the work he was doing through the foundation. Amelia interviewed everyone from Emily and Daniel to Evelyn, the elderly woman who had become one of Jack's closest friends. Each person shared their story of how Jack's words, actions, or mere presence had changed their lives, often in ways he hadn't even realized. When the documentary was released, it touched audiences around the world. Viewers saw in Jack's story a reflection of their own struggles and dreams. The documentary encouraged people to question the relentless pursuit of more and instead consider what they truly valued. Soon, messages and letters began pouring into the Second Path Foundation, each one sharing personal stories, words of gratitude, or requests for guidance. The foundation's work expanded, with new locations springing up across the country, each dedicated to helping people find fulfillment beyond the material. Despite the growing attention, Jack's life remained remarkably grounded. He continued to live simply, maintaining his routine of morning beach walks and afternoons spent at the foundation or visiting friends in town. One day, as he walked along the shore, he was joined by a teenage boy named Liam. Liam was one of the foundation's youngest participants, a quiet, thoughtful young man who had struggled with a sense of purposelessness. Liam had been raised in a family of high achievers, all of whom expected him to follow in their footsteps. He felt the weight of those expectations, yet he longed to explore art and music, passions that were seen as hobbies rather than serious pursuits in his family. Since joining the Second Path, Liam had been attending art workshops led by Daniel, and his creativity had blossomed. But he still struggled with the fear of disappointing his family. As they walked, Liam shared his concerns with Jack, who listened patiently. "It's hard when the people we love have expectations for us," Jack said gently. "But sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is to follow our own path, even if it's different from what others envision." Liam looked out at the ocean, his face pensive. "But what if they never understand? What if they're disappointed?" Jack placed a reassuring hand on Liam's shoulder. "It might be difficult at first, but the people who love us often come to understand, in time, that we need to be true to ourselves. And when they see how much joy it brings you, they may come to appreciate the choice you've made." Liam took Jack's words to heart. Over the following months, he grew more confident in his artistic pursuits, even exhibiting his paintings at a local gallery. His family was initially skeptical, but over time, they came to see the happiness his art brought him, and they learned to accept and support his path. Jack felt an immense sense of pride watching Liam grow into himself, and he recognized in the boy a younger version of himself, burdened by expectations yet longing for freedom. He realized that helping others make peace with their own paths was perhaps the greatest gift he could give. As the years went by, Jack's foundation continued to flourish. He took on a team of dedicated individuals, many of whom had been touched by his story and wanted to contribute to the cause. Together, they expanded the Second Path to include workshops, retreats, and online resources that reached people across the world. They even developed a curriculum for schools, encouraging young people to explore their values and passions before embarking on their careers. One day, Jack received an invitation to return to New York for a large conference on personal growth and fulfillment. The organizers wanted him to give the keynote address, and though Jack had grown accustomed to his quiet life, he felt a sense of responsibility to share his journey with a wider audience. At the conference, Jack spoke to thousands of attendees, sharing not just his story, but the wisdom he had gathered over the years. He spoke about the importance of self-reflection, the courage to follow one's passion, and the value of human connection over wealth. He encouraged people to redefine success, to look beyond society's standards and instead ask themselves what truly made them happy. The response was overwhelming. People approached him after the speech, sharing their own stories of transformation or expressing gratitude for the clarity his words had brought. Jack left the conference feeling fulfilled, knowing that his journey had come full circle. He had once been lost in the relentless pursuit of wealth, and now he was guiding others toward a life of purpose and meaning. Toward the end of his life, Jack became a beloved figure not just in his town but to people around the world. His story continued to inspire new generations, each one grappling with the question of what it meant to live a meaningful life. Jack's foundation grew into a movement, sparking conversations in schools, workplaces, and families about the importance of purpose and authenticity. On a quiet winter evening, as Jack sat by the fire in his modest home, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He thought of the beggar who had given him that mysterious warning so many years ago, the man whose words had led him to reevaluate everything he thought he knew about success and fulfillment. Jack often wondered who the man truly was, whether he had been real or a messenger sent to guide him when he needed it most. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts, and when he opened it, he found an old friend standing there, the beggar himself, his face lined with age but his eyes as sharp as ever. They stood in comfortable silence, each understanding the other's journey without the need for words. The man finally spoke, his voice as calm and steady as it had been all those years ago. "You've done well, Jack. You've found what many spend a lifetime searching for." Jack nodded, a quiet gratitude filling him. "I couldn't have done it without you." The man smiled, his expression warm. "We're all here to help one another. Some of us just need a little reminder now and then." With that, the beggar turned to leave, but before he disappeared into the night, he looked back one last time. "Your legacy will live on, Jack. You've shown people the way, the path that truly matters." As Jack watched him go, he felt a profound sense of peace. He knew that he had fulfilled his purpose, that his life had been one of impact and meaning. He had come a long way from the man he once was, and he was content in the knowledge that he had made a difference. In the end, Jack Harrison had found what he was searching for all along: a life rich in connection, love, and purpose. And as he gazed into the night, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had led him there. A journey that would continue to inspire others long after he was gone. In the twilight of his life, Jack's legacy grew beyond anything he could have imagined. People from across the globe connected with the story of the man who had turned away from material wealth to embrace a life of meaning and fulfillment. The foundation, the second path, became a symbol of hope and transformation, sparking what would come to be known as the movement of meaning, a global call to reimagine success, pursue passion, and live with purpose. Despite this growing legacy, Jack remained in his quiet coastal town, finding comfort in the simplicity he had come to cherish. His days were filled with small moments of joy, helping neighbors with chores, reading on the beach, and welcoming visitors to his modest home. People from all over the world would make the journey to see him, to sit and listen to his story, or to simply ask for his guidance. One winter, a woman named Clara arrived, carrying a journal filled with notes and reflections inspired by Jack's journey. Clara was a former CEO who had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, only to find herself empty and unfulfilled at the top. After watching the documentary The Second Path and reading countless articles about Jack, she felt compelled to make a change in her own life. She had left her high-powered job, moved to a small community, and dedicated herself to teaching financial literacy to underprivileged youth. Yet Clara still felt something was missing. Despite her transformation, she found herself restless, wondering if she was truly on the right path. She hoped that meeting Jack might provide the clarity she was seeking. Sitting across from him in his cozy living room, Clara poured out her heart. She spoke of her struggles, her doubts, and the fear that she hadn't truly found her purpose. Jack listened with his usual quiet attentiveness, letting her speak until she had said everything she needed to. Finally, he spoke, his voice gentle yet firm. Clara, the search for purpose isn't always about reaching a single destination. Sometimes, it's about embracing the journey, allowing yourself to grow and evolve along the way. Clara nodded, her expression softening. But how do I know if I'm truly making a difference? Jack smiled knowingly. Purpose is often less about the impact we make in the world and more about the way we live each day. If your actions bring you peace, if they fill your heart with joy, then you're already living with purpose. And those you help will feel that, even if they never know your name. Clara left with a sense of renewed clarity, understanding that her purpose was not about accolades or recognition but about the quiet, consistent work of helping others. Jack's words echoed in her mind, becoming a guiding mantra for her work in the years to come. As time went on, Jack began to write down his experiences, filling notebooks with stories of his journey, reflections on purpose, and wisdom he had gained through the people he had helped. His writings were a blend of memoir and meditation, offering insights into the art of letting go, the beauty of simplicity, and the power of human connection. These writings would eventually be compiled into a book titled Finding the Second Path. It was published posthumously by Emily, the writer Jack had mentored years earlier. She carefully preserved his words, feeling a sense of duty to share his insights with the world. The book became an instant bestseller, resonating with readers of all ages and backgrounds. Its simple, profound message, that true wealth lies in living a life aligned with one's values and passions, inspired people to seek change in their own lives. Jack's influence continued to spread, and Finding the Second Path became a movement in itself. Communities formed around the principles in his writings, with people coming together to support one another in pursuing lives of purpose. They held workshops, organized volunteer projects, and shared their journeys, creating a worldwide network of individuals dedicated to the principles Jack had lived by. One spring day, as Jack sat watching the waves, he received an unexpected visitor, a young girl named Sophie. She was no more than 9 years old, with a bright smile and eyes full of wonder. She carried a small, hand-painted rock and told Jack she had heard about him at school, where her teacher had read from his book during a class on kindness and purpose. Sophie handed him the rock, which was painted with vibrant colors and the words, "Thank you, Jack." She explained that she wanted him to have it as a gift, to show her gratitude for the way his story had touched her life, even though she didn't fully understand all of it just yet. Jack was deeply moved by her innocence and sincerity. Holding the rock in his hands, he felt a warmth he hadn't felt in years, a reminder of the beauty that exists in the smallest acts of kindness. He thanked her, and they spent the afternoon talking about her dreams and hopes. As Sophie left, Jack felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that his story had reached a new generation, that his legacy would live on through those like Sophie who were touched by his message. In the final years of his life, Jack continued to live humbly, his impact growing quietly yet powerfully. He often received letters from people around the world, from students, artists, professionals, and even retired individuals who found in his words the encouragement they needed to make meaningful changes in their lives. One letter stood out in particular. It came from an old friend in New York, a former business associate who had once admired Jack's wealth and success. The letter was filled with reflections, confessions of regret for a life spent in pursuit of money, and a heartfelt acknowledgement of the emptiness that followed. The friend wrote that Jack's story had inspired him to make amends with his family, to pursue a long-forgotten love of music, and to live with a newfound appreciation for each day. The letter ended with the words, "Thank you for being the light that helped me find my way." Jack smiled as he read, his heart full. He had often wondered if his journey had made a difference to those who had known him in his former life. This letter confirmed that even the people he'd left behind were touched by his transformation, proving that the ripples of his choices had extended far beyond what he could see. As Jack grew older, he felt a quiet readiness to let go. His life had been a remarkable journey, filled with growth, change, and purpose. Surrounded by friends, loved ones, and the community he had helped build, Jack felt at peace, knowing that he had lived a life of meaning. One evening, as the sun set over the ocean, Jack closed his eyes and drifted into a gentle sleep, a serene smile on his face. He passed away quietly, surrounded by the love and legacy he had cultivated. In the days that followed, the town mourned him, gathering to celebrate the life of the man who had given so much of himself to others. People shared stories of his kindness, his wisdom, and the ways he had helped them find their own paths. They held a ceremony on the beach, each person bringing a rock painted with colors and messages of gratitude, laying them along the shoreline as a tribute to Jack's memory. In the years to come, people continued to visit that beach, leaving hand-painted rocks in honor of Jack Harrison, the man who had found true wealth in simplicity, purpose, and love. The beach became known as Jack's Path, a place where people could walk, reflect, and find the peace that Jack had come to cherish. His foundation, the Second Path, continued its work, expanding into a global organization that inspired countless individuals to live with purpose, to let go of what didn't serve them, and to find joy in the beauty of a life well lived. Jack's story was shared in classrooms, libraries, and homes, reaching new generations who would carry forward his legacy of kindness, humility, and connection. And so, Jack Harrison's life became a beacon, a story of transformation that reminded people of the power of choice, the beauty of living with purpose, and the truth that sometimes the greatest riches lie in the path less traveled. As the years passed, Jack's story continued to evolve into a living legacy, growing in ways he never could have anticipated. The Second Path Foundation became a central hub for individuals worldwide seeking to reshape their lives through purpose and intention. The movement sparked by Jack's story fostered communities dedicated to redefining success, encouraging members to pursue careers, hobbies, and connections that brought genuine fulfillment rather than simply material gain. In honor of Jack's vision, the Second Path began hosting an annual global summit called the Gathering of Purpose. Held on the anniversary of Jack's passing, the summit attracted individuals from all walks of life: teachers, entrepreneurs, artists, students, and retired professionals. These gatherings offered a space for people to share their stories, support one another, and connect around the shared goal of living more meaningful lives. At the heart of the summit was a series of workshops inspired by Jack's journey, focusing on practices he had lived by. Workshops like letting go of the non-essential, finding beauty in simplicity, and living in service to others became cornerstones of the event, attracting people eager to bring Jack's teachings into their daily lives. One workshop, The Power of a Simple Choice, encouraged participants to take a moment each day to reflect on a single action that would bring them closer to their true selves. This practice, simple yet profound, became a movement within itself, known as the Daily Choice Challenge. Social media pages dedicated to the Daily Choice were filled with stories from around the world as people shared the small yet transformative steps they took to align their lives with what truly mattered. During one of the summits, a special guest took the stage. Sophie, the young girl who had once visited Jack with a painted rock. Now a young adult, Sophie spoke about the impact Jack had had on her life and how his kindness had inspired her to become a teacher. She was committed to spreading his message of living with intention and kindness in her classroom, encouraging her students to think about what they valued and to pursue their unique paths with courage. Sophie shared stories from her classroom, where each morning began with a purpose circle, where students could share their goals, dreams, and struggles. The ritual created a safe space for young minds to learn the importance of self-reflection, empathy, and intention. Many of her students had been impacted by Jack's story, and they saw Sophie as a continuation of his legacy, a living embodiment of his values. "When I was a little girl," Sophie told the audience, "I brought Jack a rock as a thank you. It was my small way of showing appreciation, even though I didn't fully understand his journey at the time. Now, I understand that Jack's gift to me, and to all of us, wasn't just his story, but a reminder that every life, no matter how ordinary or humble, can be extraordinary if lived with purpose." Her words moved the audience, and afterward, many people lined up to speak with her, sharing stories of how Jack's teachings had influenced their lives. Over the years, Jack's story became a symbol of resilience and purpose in ways that stretched beyond personal transformation. During times of global crisis, when people faced uncertainty and hardship, Jack's teachings served as a guiding light. His story reminded people to focus on what truly mattered: connection, compassion, and the courage to live authentically. People across the globe adopted small but impactful practices from the second path. Communities formed local groups where members could support one another in simplifying their lives, decluttering their spaces, and finding joy in small, meaningful actions. In many places, these groups became a source of strength, providing a sense of belonging and solidarity in a fast-paced, often disconnected world. Jack's story also found its way into schools, hospitals, and workplaces. Educators developed programs inspired by Jack's teachings, helping students learn the importance of self-discovery and purpose. Hospitals implemented purpose rooms where patients and their families could reflect, meditate, or simply find comfort in a space dedicated to peace and intention. Corporations, too, began offering workshops on purpose-driven leadership, encouraging employees to align their work with their values, fostering a culture of empathy and purpose within organizations. One day, an unexpected project emerged from a group of artists inspired by Jack's journey. They envisioned a public space, a tranquil garden filled with art installations representing the principles Jack had lived by: simplicity, gratitude, and connection. This garden, named the Path of Purpose, was built in Jack's small coastal town and quickly became a pilgrimage site for people wanting to experience the serenity and wisdom Jack had embodied. The Path of Purpose featured a winding trail lined with stones hand-painted by visitors from around the world. Each stone was inscribed with words of gratitude, reflections on purpose, or personal affirmations. As people walked the path, they encountered sculptures and murals symbolizing the beauty of a life lived with intention. Benches dotted the garden, providing spaces for quiet reflection, while a small pond at the center served as a meditation space, where people could let go of worries and reconnect with themselves. The garden became a beloved place, with visitors often leaving transformed, inspired to make small but meaningful changes in their own lives. Many described feeling a sense of calm and clarity, as if they could feel Jack's presence guiding them as they walked along the painted stones. One autumn evening, decades after Jack's passing, the second path celebrated its 50th anniversary with a gathering in Jack's coastal town. People from across the world attended, some who had been touched by Jack personally and others who had only known him through his story. Among the attendees was Clara, the former CEO who had dedicated her life to teaching after her transformative meeting with Jack. Now retired, Clara was honored as a special guest for her contributions to the foundation and her dedication to living Jack's message. During the event, the audience was invited to share their Jack stories, personal accounts of how his life and teachings had shaped them. The stories were filled with gratitude, resilience, and hope, each one illustrating the far-reaching impact of Jack's legacy. An elderly man named Thomas stepped forward, his hands trembling as he held a letter he had received from Jack years ago. In it, Jack had written words of encouragement that had given Thomas the strength to rebuild his life after personal loss. "Jack taught me that purpose isn't about grand achievements," Thomas said, his voice wavering with emotion. "It's about small acts of kindness, about being present for those around us. He saved my life by reminding me that my life was worth living, even if I didn't feel worthy of it at the time." By the end of the evening, tears filled many eyes, but they were tears of gratitude, of understanding that Jack's journey had become a part of each of them. The people gathered there weren't just honoring Jack. They were carrying his legacy forward, keeping his message alive for generations yet to come. As the gathering concluded, each attendee was given a small painted stone as a keepsake, a symbol of their commitment to living with intention. People took these stones back to their homes, placing them in gardens, on desks, or by windowsills, as a reminder of Jack's teachings. The movement Jack had started, one that had begun with a warning from a stranger on a cold New York street, had become a living testament to the transformative power of purpose. Jack's legacy wasn't confined to a single life. It had become a worldwide call to embrace simplicity, kindness, and meaning. And so, as people walked the world with stones in their pockets and purpose in their hearts, Jack Harrison's legacy lived on, a quiet reminder that the greatest wealth is not in what we own, but in how we choose to live. In the years following that powerful 50th anniversary, the Second Path continued to evolve, growing into a worldwide organization with a profound influence on the way people lived and connected. Jack's teachings became a guiding philosophy that permeated communities, schools, and even governments. His message of simplicity, purpose, and service spread across borders, transcending cultures and languages. As more people began to adopt the principles Jack had lived by, an initiative known as the Year of Meaning was launched by the Second Path Foundation. This global event encouraged participants to dedicate one full year to exploring their own purpose, simplifying their lives, and engaging in acts of service. For those who joined, it was a transformative experience that challenged them to question their habits, beliefs, and goals. The Year of Meaning began with a series of workshops, both in person and online, where participants could reflect on their values and set intentions for the year ahead. The foundation provided tools to help people set manageable goals, encouraging them to let go of things that no longer serve them. Each month, participants received guidance on a specific theme, such as gratitude, mindful consumption, kindness, and resilience. People shared their journeys on social media, using the hashtag the Year of Meaning to connect with others. Thousands joined, creating a virtual support network where participants encouraged one another, shared stories of personal growth, and celebrated small victories. People from all walks of life came together, united by a shared desire to live more intentionally. One story that captured the world's attention was that of Javier, a young father from Mexico City who had joined the Year of Meaning after feeling overwhelmed by the demands of his corporate job. His goal for the year was to simplify his life so he could spend more time with his family. Over the months, Javier made small but significant changes, such as reducing his work hours, creating a family budget that allowed them to live on less, and dedicating weekends entirely to his children. By the end of the year, he had transformed his life, finding joy in the simple moments he once took for granted. Javier's story was shared widely, inspiring others to reevaluate their priorities and make changes in their own lives. People from all over the world reached out to thank him for sharing his journey, and he became something of a local hero, known as the man who chose family over fortune. He continued to advocate for work-life balance, helping others find fulfillment outside of work, and eventually became a volunteer ambassador for the Second Path in his community. As the Year of Meaning gained momentum, communities around the world began organizing their own local events inspired by Jack's teachings. Cities designated public spaces for quiet reflection, and neighborhoods formed community gardens where people could work together to grow food, share resources, and connect with nature. These gardens, named Jack's Gardens, became gathering places where people could learn, volunteer, and find a sense of purpose in collective work. One of the largest Jack's Gardens was built in Tokyo, where the foundation collaborated with local artists and landscapers to create a sanctuary in the heart of the bustling city. The garden included pathways lined with trees, benches inscribed with quotes from Jack's writings, and a meditation pavilion where visitors could sit in silence, reflecting on their own journeys. These gardens soon became symbols of hope and tranquility, places where people could reconnect with themselves and each other. Many who visited felt as if Jack's presence lived on through these spaces, as though his spirit was there, guiding people toward peace and clarity. Meanwhile, the Second Path Foundation began working with educational institutions to incorporate Jack's philosophy into school curriculums. A program called Purposeful Living was developed for students, focusing on self-reflection, resilience, and empathy. The program encouraged young people to consider their values, set meaningful goals, and build strong relationships. Teachers reported that students were more engaged, more thoughtful, and more connected to each other after participating in the program. A young teacher named Ava, who had been inspired by Jack's story, led the Purposeful Living program in her school in Boston. She designed a unique classroom project where each student created a purpose tree. On each branch, students wrote down a value or goal that was important to them, creating a visual representation of their aspirations. By the end of the year, the trees were filled with words like kindness, courage, creativity, and service. The project had a profound impact on Ava's students, many of whom continued to add branches to their trees long after the project ended. For Ava, it was a joy to see her students embracing a sense of purpose so early in life. She knew they were growing up with the tools to lead lives that were not only successful but meaningful. Eventually, the Second Path Foundation's work extended into the healthcare field as well. Hospitals and wellness centers around the world adopted programs designed to support patients and healthcare workers in finding peace, resilience, and purpose. These programs offered workshops on mindfulness, gratitude practices, and purpose-driven care. A doctor named Samir, working in a bustling hospital in Mumbai, India, became one of the early adopters of the Foundation's healthcare initiatives. Inspired by Jack's teachings, he created a quiet room in his hospital where both staff and patients could find a moment of calm amidst the chaos. The room was adorned with art depicting scenes of nature and included a library of books focused on healing, purpose, and resilience. The quiet room became a refuge for many, a place where people could process their emotions, meditate, or simply breathe. For Samir, the room was a tangible way to bring Jack's teachings into his daily work, helping people heal not only physically but emotionally and spiritually as well. Perhaps one of the most profound expressions of Jack's legacy came in the form of a scholarship program launched by the Second Path. Named the Jack Harrison Scholarship for Purposeful Living, the program provided financial support to students who demonstrated a commitment to making a positive impact in their communities. The scholarship allowed recipients to pursue education, internships, or personal projects that aligned with their values and passions. One scholarship recipient was a young woman named Amina from Kenya, who dreamed of bringing clean water to her rural village. With the scholarship support, Amina was able to study environmental science and eventually return to her community to implement sustainable water systems. Her work transformed the lives of her neighbors, providing access to clean water and sparking a wave of local projects focused on sustainability and community well-being. Amina's story became an inspiration to people across Africa and beyond, illustrating how Jack's teachings had empowered individuals to create meaningful change in their communities. Her work was celebrated as a testament to the idea that one person's dedication, when aligned with purpose, could touch countless lives. By the time the Second Path Foundation marked its 100th anniversary, Jack Harrison's life had become a cherished legacy, a story passed down through generations. His teachings continued to inspire people across the world, from large cities to small towns, reminding everyone of the beauty of a life lived with intention. As people reflected on Jack's journey, they felt as if he were still with them, a quiet guide reminding them that the true measure of success lay not in what they amassed, but in the lives they touched. Jack's legacy became a lighthouse in a busy world, a reminder that each person, no matter their background or circumstances, had the potential to live a life of meaning, purpose, and profound connection. And as people walked the winding paths of Jack's gardens, wrote down their intentions in purpose journals, or shared stories in community circles, Jack Harrison's presence lived on, not just as a story of one man's transformation, but as a way of life that had changed the world. In the end, Jack's journey had come full circle. His story, once a simple tale of a man who had chosen purpose over wealth, had become a worldwide movement that would live on for generations. Through the lives he touched, the communities he inspired, and the hearts he awakened, Jack's legacy had become a timeless testament to the power of living a life aligned with love, kindness, and purpose. As the Second Path and Jack's philosophy spread across generations, his teachings became woven into the very fabric of everyday life for countless communities. Jack's life had grown into something beyond a legacy. It became a foundational pillar of a worldwide philosophy known as the Way of Purpose, a simple yet transformative approach to living meaningfully that resonated across cultures, religions, and generations. The Way of Purpose was taught in schools, practiced in workplaces, and embraced in families, turning what had once been an individual's personal journey into a global ethic. Entire communities began to adopt Jack's principles in daily life, and new traditions emerged, honoring his teachings and bringing his story into the hearts of those who had never met him. One such tradition, the celebration of Purpose Day, became an annual event celebrated globally. Inspired by Jack's story and the Year of Meaning, this day encouraged individuals, families, and communities to dedicate themselves to a day of introspection, acts of kindness, and personal connection. On this day, people were encouraged to unplug from technology, gather with loved ones, and reflect on what they valued most in life. The celebration would begin with a morning of reflection, during which people would take time to journal, meditate, or take long walks to consider their goals and values. In schools, students would create purpose collages, where they pasted images, words, and symbols representing what mattered most to them. At workplaces, teams gathered for open conversations, reflecting on how their work aligned with their personal values and how they could support each other in living more purposefully. In the afternoon, communities held gatherings in parks, community centers, and homes. People brought painted stones, similar to those placed in Jack's gardens, and together they created temporary paths of purpose, symbolizing the collective intention to walk a meaningful path in life. Music, poetry, and storytelling filled the air as people shared stories of transformation, challenges, and growth. The evening concluded with a gratitude ceremony, where participants shared something they were grateful for, offering thanks for the people, experiences, and opportunities that had enriched their lives. The day became an opportunity for connection, reflection, and renewal, with each person leaving the celebration inspired to live each day with more intention. Another tradition that emerged was the circles of purpose, small groups that gathered regularly to support one another in living Jack's teachings. These circles met in homes, community centers, and even online, allowing people from all over the world to connect, regardless of location. Each meeting was centered on one of Jack's principles: simplicity, kindness, courage, or service, and participants would discuss how they were bringing these values into their lives. These circles of purpose became more than just meetings. They were safe spaces where people could be honest about their struggles, share their dreams, and receive encouragement from like-minded individuals. The circles often became lifelong friendships, support systems that helped individuals stay grounded in their purpose even when life became challenging. One circle in a small village in South Africa, known as Ubuntu Circle, became a beloved part of the community. The group dedicated themselves to helping one another with both personal and community challenges. They took on projects to clean up public spaces, support local farmers, and ensure children in the village had access to books and learning materials. Their motto, inspired by Jack's story, was, "Together, we are rich," a reminder that true wealth lay in shared purpose and mutual support. Word of Ubuntu Circle spread, and soon other circles of purpose began adopting similar mottos and taking on projects within their communities. In cities and villages alike, these circles created ripple effects of positive change, echoing Jack's message that a life of meaning was one dedicated to lifting others. As the influence of Jack's life story grew, his original writings, known as Jack's journals, were published in a collection available in libraries, community centers, and homes around the world. These journals offered readers a window into Jack's personal reflections, his journey from Wall Street wealth to a life of purpose, and the wisdom he had gathered along the way. Each journal entry was accompanied by a short reflection exercise, encouraging readers to explore their own thoughts, values, and experiences. For many, reading Jack's journals became a transformative ritual, a moment to pause and reconnect with their own sense of purpose. Families often read the journals together, creating a legacy of shared wisdom passed down through generations. One entry that became particularly well-known was titled "The Gift of Enough." In it, Jack reflected on how letting go of the need for more had opened his life to an abundance of connection, peace, and joy. The entry became a touchstone for many readers who found comfort and inspiration in Jack's words, adopting enough as a guiding principle in their own lives. The gift of enough inspired people to redefine success for themselves, leading to a minimalist movement within the way of purpose. People began to simplify their homes, focusing less on possessions and more on experiences, relationships, and personal growth. This practice became known as living with enough, a lifestyle that emphasized quality over quantity, contentment over accumulation. As time passed, some followers of the way of purpose chose to take on a more dedicated role as pathwalkers. These individuals committed themselves to living Jack's teachings deeply and actively, often dedicating their lives to acts of service, community building, or environmental stewardship. The Pathwalkers were not monks or missionaries, but rather ordinary people who saw themselves as guardians of Jack's legacy, embodying his principles through their actions. They traveled to communities in need, volunteered in schools, led environmental projects, and helped establish new Jack's gardens and circles of purpose. Pathwalkers became role models, inspiring others to live simply, care for the earth, and serve their communities. One notable pathwalker was Lena, a former engineer from Sweden, who felt a calling to work with underserved communities. She traveled to various parts of the world, helping people set up sustainable agriculture practices and eco-friendly housing. Lena's work drew international attention, and she eventually became one of the foundation's leaders, known for her humility and unwavering dedication to the principles Jack had taught. Pathwalkers like Lena reminded people of Jack's own transformation, serving as a living testament to the possibility of change, the power of purpose, and the fulfillment that came from dedicating one's life to the greater good. By the time the Way of Purpose marked its 100th year, it had grown into a global community, with people from every continent living by Jack's teachings. Monuments to Jack Harrison stood in various countries, each inscribed with his most cherished words: "A life lived with purpose is a life fully lived." These monuments weren't grand or extravagant. They were simple sculptures in gardens, libraries, and parks, quiet reminders of a man who had changed the world by finding his own path. Educational programs, scholarships, healthcare initiatives, and environmental projects continued to flourish under the Foundation's guidance. People from all walks of life, regardless of wealth or social status, found hope and inspiration in Jack's story, seeing in it a path toward a life of peace, purpose, and fulfillment. The Way of Purpose became an integral part of society's fabric. Governments and businesses around the world adopted the Foundation's principles, implementing policies that prioritized the well-being of people and the planet. The world Jack had once walked away from, the world of wealth and power, had begun to evolve, influenced by his message of living simply and meaningfully. Leaders began to recognize that the most sustainable form of wealth was one that lifted communities, respected nature, and fostered a sense of connection. In his small coastal town, where it all began, Jack's path remained a beloved sight. People still visited from around the world, leaving stones on the beach, each one painted with messages of gratitude, purpose, and hope. The path had become sacred ground, a testament to the transformative power of a single life dedicated to meaning. And as each new generation discovered Jack's teachings, they found in his story not just a life of meaning but a call to action, an invitation to join the Way of Purpose and continue his legacy. Jack Harrison's journey had become a universal story, a reminder that within every person lies the potential to find true fulfillment, to make a difference, and to live a life of purpose. Through the lives he touched, the communities he inspired, and the principles he had lived by, Jack's legacy lived on, forever woven into the tapestry of a world that had learned to value purpose over profit, kindness over ambition, and love over fear. Years after Jack's passing, his story continued to ripple through society, growing and evolving in ways that neither he nor anyone else could have anticipated. His teachings had become a foundation for a new era, one defined by intentionality, kindness, and community. The foundation he had built, the second path, was now thriving across continents, reaching people of all ages and backgrounds. One autumn day, a young woman named Lila visited Jack's path, the sacred beach site where people from all over the world came to pay tribute to Jack's legacy. Lila was at a crossroads in her life. She had heard Jack's story as a child, but now, as a young adult struggling with the demands of a fast-paced job in a big city, his story took on a new resonance. She came to the beach to find clarity, hoping that being in the place where Jack had once walked might offer her guidance. As she strolled along the shoreline, she noticed the stones people had left, each one painted with messages of gratitude, hope, and purpose. She reached down and picked up a small, smooth stone painted with the words, "Take the step." The simplicity of the message struck her deeply, as if it were meant just for her. She decided to sit by the water, holding the stone and thinking about the changes she wanted to make. Just as the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the waves, Lila felt a sense of calm wash over her. She knew that her path forward wasn't about escaping her responsibilities, but about aligning her life with her values. She realized she could bring Jack's teachings into her own life, creating purpose within the choices she made each day. Lila left the beach inspired and determined to make small but meaningful changes in her life. She began simplifying her lifestyle, making time for her family, and volunteering with local community groups. Her small acts of kindness and service gradually attracted like-minded individuals, and together they started their own circle of purpose in the heart of the city. The circle grew rapidly, bringing people together who were also seeking a sense of purpose amidst the rush of urban life. In time, Lila's group expanded into a community organization, offering support to those in need, hosting workshops on living intentionally, and even establishing a Jack's Garden in a local park. The garden became a sanctuary within the city, a quiet place where people could come to reflect, connect, and find peace. Lila's dedication and work did not go unnoticed. She was invited to speak at the annual Gathering of Purpose, where she shared her story and the journey that had begun on Jack's path. Her words moved the audience, inspiring others to create spaces of purpose and peace in their own communities. Lila became a leader within the second path, helping to bring Jack's philosophy into cities, where people often struggled to find connection and meaning. As the way of purpose continued to grow, new initiatives emerged, each one inspired by Jack's original vision. In schools, a program called Purpose in Practice became a part of the curriculum, teaching children the value of self-reflection, empathy, and community service from an early age. Students were encouraged to explore their interests, understand their values, and think about how they could contribute to the world around them. One student, a boy named Sam, took the program to heart. He had always felt different, struggling to fit in, but through Purpose and Practice, he discovered a love for storytelling. Sam began writing stories about kindness and courage, sharing them with his classmates. His teachers recognized his talent and encouraged him to share his stories beyond the classroom. Sam's stories found an audience online, where they quickly gained a following. People were touched by his simple tales of everyday heroes and acts of compassion, and soon Sam became known as the storyteller of purpose. His work inspired other young people to share their own talents, creating a wave of purpose-driven art, writing, and community projects that spread across schools worldwide. Meanwhile, the second path continued to innovate and adapt to the needs of the times. Recognizing the global challenges of environmental degradation, the foundation launched an initiative called the Green Path. The program aimed to bring communities together in environmental stewardship, teaching sustainable practices and organizing conservation projects. People from all over the world joined, planting trees, cleaning rivers, and advocating for policies to protect natural spaces. In a small village in Brazil, a young woman named Ana led a local chapter of the Green Path. She organized community cleanups and created a sustainable farming initiative that taught local farmers how to grow food in ways that preserved the ecosystem. Her work transformed the village, restoring local rivers and forests, and creating a model of sustainable living that other communities began to emulate. Ana was invited to speak at a global summit on sustainability, where she shared the ways that the Green Path had transformed her community. She spoke passionately about Jack's teachings and how they had inspired her to see the land not just as a resource, but as a gift to be cared for. Her words inspired environmental leaders around the world, leading to partnerships and collaborations that brought the Green Path to countless communities. As the second path marked its 100th anniversary, the foundation launched a digital archive of Jack's original teachings, his journals, and the countless stories of those who had been inspired by his life. The archive, named The Legacy of Purpose, was accessible to anyone with an internet connection, allowing people around the world to learn from Jack's story and the movements that had followed. The archive included personal stories, interviews, videos, and even virtual tours of places like Jack's Path and Jack's Gardens. People shared their experiences and reflections, creating a global tapestry of voices united by a shared commitment to purpose. The archive became a resource for students, educators, families, and anyone seeking inspiration for a life of meaning. Through the legacy of purpose, Jack's message continued to reach new generations, each one interpreting his teachings in ways that resonated with their time and challenges. The world had transformed, but Jack's story remained a guiding light, a reminder of what was possible when one person chose to live a life of intention and compassion. And so, Jack Harrison's journey lived on, not just as a memory but as a force of change that shaped lives, communities, and even the world itself. His simple yet profound message, that true wealth is found in living with purpose and love, became a timeless beacon, lighting the way for all who sought a life of meaning. In the end, Jack's legacy wasn't just his own. It belonged to everyone who had walked the second path, each person adding their own chapter to the story, making Jack's vision a living, breathing testament to the power of purpose, kindness, and connection. Through them, Jack's journey continued, forever evolving, forever expanding, a boundless path stretching forward, lighting the way for all who dared to follow. The story of Jack Harrison serves as a reminder that a single life, lived with intention, kindness, and purpose, can create ripples of change that touch countless souls around the world. His journey from the pursuit of material success to a quest for genuine meaning transformed not only his own life but inspired generations to reconsider their values, to seek what truly matters, and to choose a life rich with purpose. Jack's legacy became a living philosophy, deeply rooted in the hearts of those who followed in his footsteps, building communities centered on simplicity, unity, and care for one another. His example continues to inspire, resonating with those who are searching for their own place and meaning in this world. Jack's story is not an ending but the beginning of a journey for everyone who, inspired by his path, wishes to contribute to the lives of others and find lasting joy and peace. His legacy is an enduring reminder that true wealth is not in what we own but in how we live and in the impact we have on those around us. In this way, Jack Harrison lives on in everyone who finds a piece of themselves in his story, in those who are committed to making the world better than they found it. His path is a light that guides all who seek meaning, love, and authenticity in their lives.